Today's Friday, December 29th, and you're listening to episode 5 of the IoT Weekly podcast. Hello, and welcome to episode number 5 of the IoT Weekly podcast, brought to you by Gearforge Software. My name is Matthew, and I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Cliff. How you doing today, Cliff?
Doing really well, Matthew. Yourself?
Doing great.
Excellent.
As always.
Of course.
So this is the podcast where we talk about the cloud and IoT news and generally geek out over technology and sometimes Star Wars and Dungeons and Dragons and other nerdy pursuits.
Exactly.
So what have you been up to lately, Cliff?
Well, of course, this last weekend we had Christmas, so it was, the family came over, and actually it was absolutely wonderful. So a lot of times you end up having family and you got anxiety and all the other stuff that comes with that, and this time, surprisingly, it was just great.
That's awesome.
There were no crying children. We played games, and just nobody had attitudes. It was so much fun, and of course, as everybody know, I love food. I love sweets, so this is my best if worst time of year, and I eat way too much food. I think I track my calories on a daily basis, and those days they still tracked, but I decided not to look at them.
Totally understand. It's always nice to quantify that.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Yep,
and
I've definitely overeaten today.
For quite a few days. Yes, it doesn't take much. And then from a more technical standpoint, I've been playing with the CNC shield that plugs on top of Arduino. And for those of you that aren't familiar with CNC, the actual acronym, it stands for Computer Numerical Control. So whenever you've got like an X, Y, Z type scenario that you need to deal with, so basically if you've got, let's say, a series of motors or servos that you need to run, and each one is a different kind of axis, you can do that with this type of shield. So it's pretty slick, and I look forward to sharing more about how that project comes along.
Fun. That sounds awesome.
Super fun. Yep. Yeah. How about yourself? What have you been up to?
So we had a nice holiday as well.
Yeah.
Yep. It was, pretty low key. We usually keep the holidays pretty low key, but
Lots of dachshunds.
Yeah, lots. 5, as a matter of fact.
Oh my gosh.
It's a ton of dogs. And so pretty low key. We played some games of Carcassonne, which is fun.
So much fun.
Yeah, super, super good. Nice lightweight strategy game. Like it a lot. And then spent some time playing around with PowerShell, which it's not my first language.
It's almost blasphemy you saying PowerShell.
I know, isn't it?
Yeah,
I know, totally. So it's sort of random too. I don't even know why I did this, but I've been forcing myself to try out, like I've been saying, the fall creators update for Windows 10, and especially interested in sort of the Linux enhancements on there. And for some reason, I got this wild hair that I'm like, I don't know anything about PowerShell. I want to, learn something. And the reason is actually because they changed the default shell from the old command interpreter to PowerShell now. And so when I go for my command prompt, I get PowerShell. And so I was like, you know what? I don't really know anything about it.
Interesting.
And I'll tell you what. A year or two ago now, Microsoft open sourced PowerShell and made it available for Mac and Linux and BSD and God only knows what else. And I sort of was like, I don't know why that matters, but okay, if you're working in a Windows environment, I get why PowerShell is cool for you. But if you're not, not sure what the benefit is, we've got Python and shell scripts and all sorts of things.
Yep.
Gave it a try. I gotta say, color me impressed. It is pretty awesome. And I actually used it. So I put it on my Mac, and that is absolutely the easiest way for me to read a CSV file.
No kidding.
Hands down. Yeah, it's amazing. And as anybody who has done .NET development before, like you and I have, it is basically built right on top of .NET. And so it has some maybe options to extend in ways that some of the other languages don't. So really, I was honestly super impressed, and the fact that it's running like no problems, I had no issues. It just runs on my Mac. Unbelievable.
That
So,
actually is unbelievable.
yeah, so that was kind of fun.
Yeah,
Felt like I added a little knowledge to my database.
that's great.
So Cliff, I ran across a joke on Twitter that I wanted to share with you.
All
You got a
right, let's
minute?
go for it. Is this going to crack me up?
I don't know if it will, but
Okay.
it seems
There's a
appropriate
lot
for
of
the
jokes
season.
on Twitter. I'm just telling you now. I don't know if you've noticed that.
It's 50% jokes and the other 50% of people complaining about stuff.
Yes.
But
Yes.
And then there's a little bit of IoT in there too, which
Yes.
is I'm there for the tech. But
and there's memes about the jokes on top of that.
There are memes about the jokes. Honestly, yeah, the memes are so funny. So there are 4 stages in a man's life.
Okay.
Number 1, you believe in Santa. Number 2, you don't believe in Santa. Number 3, you are Santa. And number 4, you look like Santa. I like that one.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I really like that. I'm not going to say at what stage I'm at, but I totally recognize all of these stages.
Totally. Before I shaved my beard, I think I was trending toward the "you look like Santa."
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, but I shaved my Unix beard, my Unix admin beard, and now I think it's less. I have less of the Santa vibe going on.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe somewhere between 3 and 4.
Right. Exactly. I still wear the red pants and fur-lined red jacket with the big black belt.
Of course, don't we all?
But I don't have the beard. Well, yeah, what else are you going to code in?
Yeah, exactly. And the hat and the boots and everything else.
Oh, the boots. Yeah, I don't wear those in the house though.
Oh my gosh.
So, Cliff, I understand we're running a contest right now.
Yes, we are.
Is that true?
It's very true. I don't think anybody knows about it because we actually didn't get anybody tweeting about it. The other side of the coin is that I looked at analytics and it looks like we're turning down a little bit. And I'm thinking it's the holidays. I know. That's actually my personal opinion, just because of the fact that based off the previous weeks, we've actually had a lot of folks kind of pinging us back and giving us advice and things like that. But this past week has been somewhat crickets. We still had quite a few folks listening to the podcast, but not as many as the previous weeks. So lots of opportunity here.
Love the data. Yep, it's all upside. So
entirely upside. So we do have a contest. So what we have is we've got some IoT buttons, 2nd generation from Amazon. And to enter the contest, what we like you to do is just follow us at Gearforge IoT on Twitter. And once we get 50 followers, we're going to choose one of them at random to get one of these buttons from Amazon. And if you actually boost our tweets by retweeting them, we'll put your name in the hat. So you get extra space in there if you'd like.
Yeah. We certainly appreciate the follow. And in addition, if you have any feedback for us, we'd love to hear from you, whether it might be things you'd be interested in hearing about, news articles that we haven't picked up on, anything related to IoT that you're curious about or would like to ask. We would love to hear from you. And additionally, we're looking for people to interview. So if you happen to be somebody who might have a thing or two to say about IoT and would like to set the record straight, because we haven't had the chance to talk to you yet, we would love to get you on the show. So in that case, you can contact us on Twitter, or you can connect with our email address, which is podcast@gearforgesoftware.com. And of course, the Twitter handle, as Cliff just mentioned, @GearforgeIoT. So please get in touch.
We would love to have you and look forward to chatting.
So, Cliff, I wanted to share, before we get into our main segment, I wanted to share a tweet that my wife sent out last time we were recording, because I have locked myself into my home office /studio. And as you well know, we have 3 dachshunds in the house. Yes. And so during the last episode, she tweeted, my husband has been recording a podcast while I've been hollering at Oscar, one of the dachshunds, for peeing on the floor. The perils of working from home. So you may hear some extraneous barking in the background, or perhaps somebody yelling at a dog.
Yes, and
pay it no heed.
there's dogs on both sides, because I have my dog at our other office laying underneath the desk here. So he comes into the office with me most every day, and he's now figured that this is his home. So in many cases, when folks will come in, he might have a random bark or two. So he's kind of the office dog at this point.
Yeah, we are definitely dog lovers on this show.
Definitely.
All right. So now it is time for a word from our sponsor, Gearforge Software. Gearforge Software was founded to focus on and develop Internet of Things technology and create custom IoT solutions. There are so many things to consider when you're trying to develop a new idea. There's the hardware, the software, connecting all of it to the cloud. Then you've got to worry about all those nasty hackers that want to tear into your data and steal your secrets. What you need are some techie advisors to help guide you through the wild west of this new digital frontier. With 2 IoT labs, Gearforge can bring any prototype to life. And you can learn more at gearforgesoftware.com. And thank you for sponsoring the show.
Yes, thank you so much.
And what do we have up for news this week, Cliff?
Well, we've got a few stories this week. So the nice thing is it's not as long as last week. So that could be the other reason why we had fewer. We did have a very long segment. I think there was just a ton of news getting pushed out right before the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
This time we're scaling it back to kind of our more normal amounts.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are a lot of posts this week. Almost all of them are the New Year's predictions posts. So I find those less interesting, though.
I do too. It's like here's what's going to happen in 2018, or this was 2017 in review. The predictions are just ridiculous sometimes, or it's like, yep, they're just rehashing what they said last year. So it wasn't a huge surprise.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So what's up first?
Well, the first one, it looks like, is Meet IOTA. So it's the cryptocurrency for the Internet of Things.
All right.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It says it was launched in November, and it was cryptocurrency specifically for IoT microtransactions.
Yeah, I had never heard of this before, but I ran across it, and I thought it was interesting. I mean, there's been so much talk about Bitcoin. In fact, I read today on Forbes that Bitcoin was actually the #2 global search term last year.
Oh my gosh, seriously?
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I get why. I mean, it's a phenomenon for sure, right?
Yeah.
Good or bad, it's a phenomenon. And as I understand, it has some drawbacks that has been one of the reasons why a lot of people are, or why the forks have been produced. And it looks like, IOTA is another take on this sort of blockchain cryptocurrency concept, specifically focused on trying to create a cryptocurrency that can work well with IoT devices. And I think specifically what they're aiming at here is trying to handle massive volume. And this is one of the bottlenecks in Bitcoin, right? Is, as I understand it, it sort of maxes out at 4 to 7 transactions per second, right? Something like that.
That's kind of ridiculous.
It is.
To be able to do thousands or millions per second, realistically.
Well, Visa advertises that they can do 47,000 a second or something like that using traditional SQL-based techniques, right?
Yep.
So, so this is as I understand it. I didn't do a deep dive here. I read just a bit, and there's a white paper by this creator of the mathematician Sergei Popov, and I read just a bit of that, and it sounds like they're essentially trying to. They've created this blockless Tangle ledger system as a way of trying to get around some of the challenges with validating those transactions in the ledger in Bitcoin. So, I think the whole idea here is to be able to scale to a bajillion IoT transactions.
Yes. I think the tough part though is right before the show, we're like, all right, what would it take to actually buy some IOTA? And it looks like it doesn't look easy. It doesn't
It
look like
doesn't,
I can
does it?
just walk over to my bank and say, hey, I want to get 10 shares or 10 are they shares or what are they considered here?
I don't know,
What
IOTAs?
IOTAs? Yeah, 10 IOTAs, please. Um, so, and it's like, well, if we're going to deal with transactions and they can be confirmed per second, how does the IoTs buy these things in the first place? Because there's going to be some way to actually purchase these, or if there's not mining systems or something like that, how do they make that happen?
Yeah, I don't know enough. I don't know enough,
From
but
like
it
a
does.
microtransaction standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, the IOTAs are priced at $3.47 as of today's recording.
Sure.
But it says in the article, this article is from bazinga.com. And it said the market cap was nearly 14 billion at the time the article was written, making it the 6th largest cryptocurrency in the world, which is not nothing. And
No,
it looks
not
like
at all.
listed 7th as of today, but still it's like that's a pretty sizable thing. And it looks like the value has increased quite a bit over the last few months from 50 cents or whatever it used to be. So
exactly. So we've seen an increase from that standpoint, but I think it comes back to if you're going to use this for IoT microtransactions, it's one thing to have just the currency in place, but it's the other part to actually have it where you've got some way to actually buy those, transfer those. I realized maybe blockchain to be able to kind of facilitate those, but how do you get from one point to the other, and how do you actually start out with some sort of balance in the first place?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know the technology behind it. I'm intrigued. The concept's intriguing. My question is, do we really need a micropayment system? What fundamental problem is this solving?
Yeah,
Is it that the
I don't
current
know.
payment systems can't handle it? What is the underlying issue? And I'd be curious to know more. I mean, I probably should spend some more time understanding what's going on here because I think it's intriguing, but that was sort of my question. Like what do we need it? Is it solving a critical problem now? And I'd
Yeah,
love to hear from listeners if
and I totally
you've got an
agree with
opinion.
you. As I'm really curious from the microtransaction standpoint, what's the difference between using, let's say, USD or Euro or something like that versus trying to have the IoT? I understand it's like maybe a universal type scenario, but are really individuals are still somewhat kind of geographically fixed in many cases, and that's the same thing we're seeing with the IoT type devices. Is there's some sort of geography with those?
Well, yeah, I mean, the quote here from Popov says the Tangle, which is this blockless Tangle ledger system, says the Tangle naturally succeeds the blockchain as its next evolutionary step and offers features that are required to establish a machine-to-machine micropayment system. And he wrote that's a white paper that he wrote, and I read a few paragraphs. Again, I'm not an expert, don't pretend to be, but I mean, my question is that machine-to-machine micropayment system really? I mean, what benefit does that derive over traditional payment techniques?
I really don't know. So it's like, what's the difference between just using kind of your phone that already has a payment system built into it to walk up to your parking meter and pay, right?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't know. I'm curious. I'm
Yeah.
really interested in this concept. I'm not quite on board yet.
I think it's a great way to do like machine-to-machine micro laundering from a money standpoint.
Well, yes, that is true. I would be really curious to know if you are listening to the podcast and you have thoughts. I know lots of technical people these days have thoughts about cryptocurrency, but also from a business standpoint. If you're running a business or just generally interested in cryptocurrency, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this IOTA.
Yep. Are you going to be taking these?
Accepting them?
Yeah.
I honestly, I would not say no if I can figure out how to
buy them.
Exactly. So Cliff, it looked to me like you have to buy another cryptocurrency first and then convert it?
Yeah, from what I'm seeing, it's like you go to Coinbase, you buy, let's say, Ethereum or Bitcoin, and then you register on Binance, and then transfer let's say your Ethereum or Bitcoin to Binance, and then inside of there you buy the IOTA with the Ethereum or Bitcoin. Like, holy buckets! And at what point does my bank account get hacked in this entire process, and I'm out my entire checking account and
Well,
identity?
that seems much easier than using a credit card.
Oh, entirely, so much easier.
I know
And
that ease
I'm
is
sure
not the point.
I'm sure there's an API for this for my for my Raspberry Pi.
I don't mean to be fully. I don't mean to sound so skeptical,
Oh, no.
because there
I'm
is
really
a philosophy behind all of this that I think
yes,
is probably legit. I find it funny. Like, that's a lot of hoops to jump through.
entirely. It's got to get much more simplified to make it work. Once it's set up where I can actually just buy IOTA through, let's say, Stripe,
Yeah.
it makes it so much easier.
But here's what's cool, I think, about the cryptocurrency stuff is basically this is what we're seeing is we're seeing prototyping happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening in real time in the wild right now. People are, and it is facilitated by open source because you can create the fork, and that's happening. And what we're seeing is people sort of this idea evolve and adapt to new uses, and time will tell, right? Like all technology, it's like time will tell if it is really going to be a long-term success or not. Like, I don't know. Wearables, everybody was raving about them 5 years ago, and I feel like that industry has gone nowhere, but it's because really I don't think we've figured out all the the places where it fits yet. And the same thing is true with things like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, what have you. Bitcoin may not be around in 20 years, but I bet there's some part of what we're going through right now that will make it into the financial systems of the future. We just don't know what or how. So it'll be interesting. I'm super intrigued and interested to follow it.
I am too. Definitely very interested.
So this next article looks really interesting. Do you want to kick that off?
Yeah, sure. So the next one here is the Air Force Research Lab. Development integrates Internet of Things onto a wearable 3D printed chip. As you can imagine, the Air Force or even the military, from that standpoint, is very interested in how do we get something that's much more flexible, either to wear or even to put onto different pieces of equipment that gets deployed out into the field, right?
Sure.
Yep. So what it states here in the article, and this was found on 3ders.org, it says the Internet of Things is, alongside 3D printing, one of the key emerging technologies that should be disrupting the way industry works and the ways that people engage with it over the upcoming years. A recent breakthrough by the Air Force Research Laboratory in collaboration with American Semiconductor saw these two technologies combined in a pioneering way to create an Internet of Things network control system on a microchip, which was made of silicone on polymer. The smart wearable device is one of the most complex, flexible, integrated circuits ever produced.
Interesting. So I have a question. So I think what makes this noteworthy is that it was 3D printed, right?
Yeah.
What is the advantage there? I mean, is that just sort of a prototyping step?
Yeah.
Is it that you could? Is it something you could do in the field? I'm just not 100% sure what the role of 3D printing is here.
That's what my understanding is. It's made so that way you don't have to, let's say you want to be able to deploy thousands of these to soldiers, and let's say you're over in Iraq, right?
Yeah.
Being able to have it on a 3D printer, you could essentially have that printed in the field, basically, or in a field situation, be able to deploy these and be able to kind of send those out. In most cases, when it comes to the military, you want to be able to, and the thing about it too is, a lot of times the military, they've got clean rooms and things like that they can actually deploy. So it's not like they don't have that capability. It's you just don't want to have to go back to a lab somewhere to be able to have to do these things back in California. You need to have these capabilities in the field to be able to get deployed.
Yeah, so you can just send the schematic over the network basically, and then print them
Yep.
in the field somewhere.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
that way they're
sure.
available whenever out there. So it sounds like
Interesting.
they're pretty darn excited about this, as you can imagine. And of course, they really it goes into is the key part is they can actually work online or offline and then be able to
Mhm.
send that data once you actually connect up with the network.
So, and it's interesting because it says here they took silicon integrated circuit chips and thinned them until they became flexible. So it's
Yeah.
actually like it's flexible.
Yep.
Not only is it 3D printed, but it's actually, yeah, it will bend. And then my question is, so yeah, I guess so. The components themselves, I don't know. Is it 100% 3D printed, or is it somehow printed around? I'm just interested in the technology. So
Yeah,
the
it doesn't
circuits
go
themselves.
into a ton of depth, as you can imagine, right?
Mm,
It's pretty high level in the article itself from that standpoint.
yeah, it's super interesting.
Yep. So they've got some
Yeah.
photos and stuff like that in the link, and it kind of talks through the schematics of how this would possibly work from that standpoint.
So I mean, that is potentially really disruptive, actually, if you think about that, not from the military standpoint, but from a kind of end user or DIY kind of standpoint. You think about the way 3D printing has changed the ability to create things that would have previously required a factory setting.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what if you can do your own circuits, right, using some kind of a custom 3D printer? So, we talk about off-the-shelf hardware that you can do prototyping with, but even moving past that, what if you can now print your circuit board? You don't have to send it to a company to do that,
Yeah, that'd be super, super slick. So all of a
right?
sudden you can be like, yep, I'm creating this chip, and it's very much specific to what I need. I don't have to take all the other kind of blow to the sensors that I don't need.
Yeah, it's like we figured that out already. We know
Yep.
what we need, we know what we don't, and now we need just the parts that make sense. Normally, that would have to go to somebody who could do the circuit board, but now you could potentially print them. It makes for faster prototyping. I mean, that next level of prototyping, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You want to
Precisely.
make changes now. Maybe that's something you can do. A small business can do on their own. That's kind of cool.
I think that's very cool. So I'm really curious to see how long before this kind of starts really growing from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's cool.
Hmm.
Very awesome.
So, and it sounds like they're going to be continuing to move forward on this. So, yeah, so it's one of the things just specifically around kind of what you're saying is the integration of low-cost 3D printed circuitry should allow the rest of the industry to follow the company's lead and shift from rigid to more flexible offerings,
Hmm.
as well as supporting the continued disruptions offered by the whole range of Industry 4.0 breakthroughs.
Interesting.
Yep.
Super
So
cool.
they partnered up with American Semiconductor to do this
Yeah.
scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the next 10 years or so bring.
Oh, entirely. Entirely. I think there's going to be some really interesting things that come out of this.
Yeah.
Well, what's the next one we have here, Matthew?
We've got the Things Gateway. And
Oh,
I think this is something, Cliff, you've talked about this before. The Things Network
yep.
is basically that's a crowdsourced and open Internet of Things data network. The Things Gateway is the hardware that powers it, at least as I understand it.
Yep.
And I'm just going to read from the product offering here, but it says the Things Gateway uses a long range and low power radio frequency protocol called LoRa. And for short range Bluetooth, technology allows for things to talk to the internet without 3G or Wi-Fi. And let's see what else it says here. Basically advertising, long range, low power, and makes it available for use cases that were never before possible. 6 miles of network coverage radius connects to Wi-Fi or Ethernet in addition to and Bluetooth, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So this is pretty interesting, and I know you've mentioned the Things Network before. I think my questions about this are, I mean, I love the idea, having some kind of a distributed network. We're always talking about how are these things going to connect. I don't know that I understand well enough sort of what they're doing here with this network. They have these gateways. They're encouraging people to set them up. It's intended to be crowdsourced. But what is the, so then what does that mean, basically? So you have a network, and who is controlling it, and how can I guarantee that I can get my data and that my data is secure and all those things?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. There's right now they say there's 833 gateways, and I just have more questions, if anything, with regards to the lower gateway and kind of the things network in general. So I would love to actually just sit down and talk with someone about this, just so we can get some more info to clear up kind of what this is and how to get the data and kind of all those different pieces around this. I've looked into this extensively, and I probably still have more questions than answers at this point.
Yeah, well, it says you can use HTTPS or the security embedded in the LoRa WAN protocol, but I'm not 100% sure how that all works. I'd probably need to do a deeper dive, but I think that's my initial question. I love the idea of a distributed network.
I do too.
Love it. Like it's something that's peer-to-peer and crowdsourced would be fantastic, but I also have a bunch of questions about how it's implemented, because it seems like, man, now where's your data?
Yep.
It's like, right now, I don't know where my data is either, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies specifically want to know, how do I access my data? What if I want to back that up? What's my transport, if I want to be able to transfer from one to another? Like, there's a lot that's questioned from the cloud aspect of things, from the network itself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, like, so where my data, I've got a gateway, my device connects to that, my data goes through this distributed network, right, to somebody else's gateway. Yes, something like this must be true, right? It's peer-to-peer. How do I know my data is secure?
Yeah, that's the great question.
What is the security protocol that they're mentioning
I would
here?
be really curious about that.
And I mean, security is hard, so is it right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I hate saying this, but I'll do the prediction that eventually down the road we're going to see the Things network gets hacked. I'd be shocked, just because as you grow attention to things like this, you're going to draw more folks who are going to be definitely interested in getting to that information, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, I'll read some more about the protocol. But I would love to, if you know anything about the Things network or the Things gateway. I think this is a super interesting device. I'd love to try it just for prototyping purposes.
Yep.
But yeah, I'd like to know more. Like, is this the future of networking, or is this, just some, an option now?
Yes, exactly. I'm really curious. All right.
So next up, Cliff.
Yeah, another really interesting scenario. We've got essentially the matrix voice. Yeah, so I ran across this one here, and it was really interesting. So it's a new IoT development board, specifically targeted at voice. And I'll read here through. So the Matrix Voice is a development board for building sound-driven behaviors and interfaces.
Sure.
Yeah, so think like Alexa, right?
Yeah, totally. Did you see that the Echo Dot, Amazon said that was their #1 holiday item?
I know, and we ended up getting one from one of the family members.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep. Yeah, so it's coming. It's here, basically.
Cool.
It's really already here.
Yeah.
So they've now released these Matrix Voice. They cost $55 or $65. There's some options there, and they're available on their website. So, and these folks also have what's called a Matrix Creator, which is a fully featured development board. and I'll throw this out there, but it has various tons of sensors, wireless communication. Of course, it has like a huge microphone array and an FPGA. What do you think that is?
Is that a golf tournament?
Nope. Try again.
Let's go for a field programmable gate array.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. So,
Ching.
yeah, so what it is essentially you have these gates that you can actually program once it's actually been deployed, so they're not hardwired.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Slick.
That's cool.
Yep. So this one runs $99. So it's and again, both of these are available on their site. So pretty exciting stuff here for the Matrix.
Yeah, and I said this to you before the show, but so the way the Matrix Creator to me, so the value proposition there is basically on this one board are a bunch of sensors and things that you would otherwise have to sort of purchase separately, right?
Yeah.
But it kind of comes with all of them included, and at a much lower price than you would do you'd pay if you had to pick up all of those parts separately.
Yep.
So
well, and you think about the form factors, much smaller too.
Yeah,
They're trying to wrangle all of these together, and then one of the things we're running into too is the power, right? They're all different from a power standpoint. So you're going to make sure you have the power correctly.
Yeah, and so I mean, I actually feel like this one might be a good fit for a couple of projects we're looking at. So
yep, totally agree.
Very cool.
So if you've used the Matrix Voice or the Matrix Creator, let us know. We'd love to get feedback on your thoughts.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Yep. All right. Do we have anything else, Matthew?
Well, I think that wraps up the news.
All right.
Just a nice reminder that if you have feedback, you can contact us at podcast@gearforgesoftware.com or on Twitter @GearforgeIoT. And we would love to hear from you, even if it's not related to the topic of the show. We just love to interact. So get in touch.
Love to. All right. So that basically wraps things up for this week. Anything fun planned for the weekend, Matthew?
Yes. So I have the 1977 Holmes edition of Dungeons and Dragons in a box.
Ooh.
Like classic Dungeons and Dragons, and Callum and I, my son, we're going to play this weekend. I promise.
That sounds like a ton of fun.
Yeah, we're going to do the classic introductory adventure that's in the back of the book. So That should be great.
That will be fun. You have to let me know how that goes. I love playing that.
Yeah, that was super fun. So what about you, Cliff? Anything fun for the weekend?
It looks like our neighbors is going to have a New Year's Eve party with a euchre tournament. So
that's a card game, yes?
It's very much a card game. I haven't played this since Indiana, so we're going to go over probably a day ahead and just learn how to play again.
Yeah, interesting. Well, that sounds like fun.
Should be a lot of fun.
Tournament, that's great. All right. Well, that wraps up our episode today. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you'll join us again for next week's show. Until then, so long and be well.